In the spring of 1474, the English Parliament passed a resolution to recognize the late Lady and Beauchamp. This was done to avoid complications in passing on the considerable inheritance of the noble lady to her rightful heirs. The only problem was that Anne was very much alive at the time, defying all parliamentary proclamations. The story began several decades earlier. Two noble families, the Beauchamps, some prefer to pronounce this name in the French manner as Beauchamp, and the Nevilles, arranged marriages between their children. 2 boys and 2 girls were wed in Abergavenny, as the union was intended to be double, but for a long time, it remained merely a formality. The couples truly began living as husband and wife much later. As the newly formed families welcomed children, Anne and her husband had 2 daughters, Isabella and Anne, while the second couple had 1 daughter. However, tragedy struck, and death gradually claimed members of one family, transferring their rights, titles, and estates to their relatives, in this case, to Anne and Richard Neville. The young couple became some of the wealthiest individuals in the English kingdom and were now officially titled the Earl and Countess of Warwick. This household lived lavishly, hosting guests in such numbers that 5 whole cattle were required for a typical daily meal. The head of the family, Richard Warwick, was completely engrossed in political affairs. He earned the nickname the Kingmaker for his role in supporting first Edward IV and then Henry VI. Anne and Richard prepared a brilliant future for their 2 daughters, entirely dependent on the shifting political landscape. Isabella was married off to the brother of King Edward, while Anne, the younger sister, to avoid confusion, let's refer to her this way, was wed a bit later to the son of King Henry. Essentially, the 2 sisters found themselves on opposing sides of a political divide, with their father shifting his support back and forth between the 2 factions. However, this situation didn't last long. The first husband of the younger and passed away. The political climate in England changed once again, and soon the young widow was walking down the aisle again, this time with another brother of King Edward. Now both daughters of and Beauchamp were married to 2 princes from the same York family. Richard Warwick had by then passed away. The vast family inheritance was to be divided among 3 women, the widow and Beauchamp, and her 2 princess daughters, Isabella and Anne the Younger. This set the stage for a true drama, as the husbands of each heiress were eager to claim a larger share for themselves. Naturally, the primary obstacle was the widow. At just under 50, she was considered an attractive woman and, contrary to popular beliefs about the Middle Ages, still had the potential to remarry. King Edward IV understood this well. He had 2 motives. First, to take revenge on the widow for the betrayal of her husband. As we recall, Warwick had switched sides. And second, to keep the Neville-Warwick estate closer to the crown. Thus, it was preferable that Anne Beauchamp received nothing. Attempts were made to confine her to a convent. To further solidify this, the English Parliament declared her deceased. And what about the daughters, you might ask? Isabella is traditionally viewed as the more greedy of the 2, and she allegedly did not come to her mother's defense. Interestingly, Isabella soon died, and her husband was executed. As for Anne the Younger, with the help of her husband, she successfully secured the release of Anne Beauchamp and brought her to live in her own home. English history at that time was marked by constant upheaval. King Edward died, and the throne passed to the husband of Anne the Younger, who then returned some of Anne Beauchamp's estates to her. It wasn't much, but it was better than nothing. However, Richard III, the king married to Anne the Younger, didn't hold on to power for long. The Tudors ascended the throne. Under this next king, Anne Beauchamp sought justice to reclaim her rightful inheritance, but she was unsuccessful once again. She died in the year 1492, becoming the only woman in English history to be recognized as deceased while still alive.